This is a Q Media production.
Welcome back to Leading Change. In today's episode, we delve into the transformative world of AI with our special guest, Nick Beaugeard. Nick is the CEO and founder of World of Workflows and is not only an expert in AI solutions, but also an author and international speaker. With a keen eye for technical leadership, Nick has witnessed firsthand the pitfalls that often lead to the failure of promising technology startups. In this episode, Nick shares his predictions for the future of AI, explores topics such as machine learning and AI chatbot support, and offers real-life examples of AI's impact across various industries. From addressing the challenge of AI hallucinations to integrating AI into education, Nick provides valuable insights into harnessing the power of AI to drive meaningful change. Hey, Nick, thanks for being here.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Now, Nick, we hear all the time about robots coming to take our jobs. What does the workforce of the future actually look like?
Wow, if I could predict that, I'd be a gazillionaire. So I'll give you my predictions, but I'll warn you, my predictions are always normally rubbish. So we'll see what it is. Yeah, lots of people have said AI is going to come take my job. And I do a lot of presenting to accountants and financial professionals, and they're certainly a little scared. I kind of like boil it down into a glib one-liner. I'll go, AI is not going to take your job. Someone with AI is going to come and take your job. And I think that's the trick. We found a whole bunch of personal assistants. And I think that's where the technology is now that make us all smarter, faster, quicker, and better. And the all is really important. If you're sitting on the fence right now going, will I use AI? Won't I use AI? Your competition, and not just your company's competition, your personal competition for roles are going to be using AI to make themselves 10 to 100 times more efficient. And I'm doing that myself, and a lot of my peers are. And the amount of output you can throw out there, the amount of blog posts or the amount of documents or the amount of resumes or anything you can build and create is outstanding. And you're able to really magnify what you're able to do. I'm kind of scared now, right? I'm going, if all of the AIs in the world stop, and we know they won't, right? Because some of them are hosted and some of them aren't. But if all the AIs in the world stop, how am I going to do my job anymore? So that's kind of where it is. But if you're kind of sitting there on the fence going, will I, won't I? You just have to. It's like when people came up with power tools and there are people sitting there with the old manual drill going, I'm far better with my manual drill. Well, you're just not. So it's going to be a world where humans and technology assistants go hand in hand to solve the problems we have.
Maybe we should go back to some definitions.
Sure.
Because people are always talking about AI and, it's kind of one of those things. It's a house. Well, is it big? Is it small? Is it blue? Is it red? How do we start? What is the actual definition of AI? And people talk about automation and robots. Where are we? Where do we start?
So AI is artificial intelligence. So that's a machine which does things that we'd normally attribute to human intelligence. So for example, if we go back years and years and years ago, they had these things called automatons. Mechanical things which would write or play music or play pianos. And they were, in a way, AIs. If you think of what's happening in a really simple one, you're driving your car and you put the indicator on, and when you turn back, the indicator turns off. In a way, that's a very simple AI. It's doing a human intelligence thing. So it's nothing new. I think that's important for everybody to get. But the AI everyone's talking about, the chatbots of the world, the generative pre-trained transformers, the GPTs and those things, they're built out of a set of technologies called machine learning. And I know lots of people turn around and say, this is all new. It's not. The first conference on machine learning was at Dartmouth College in the 50s. So we're at least 70 years into the development of this technology. It's older than most of us. And it's about an area of computer science that allows me to give a computer program that I've created a whole set of data and a whole set of outputs based on that data. And it then adjusts itself, in a way, writes its own program to predict the output from data. I give it fresh data, it predicts the output. And so it's important to realize when you use a ChatGPT, all it can do is predict the very next word. So let me flesh that out a little bit because it's it plays with your mind if you're not careful. So when I type a sentence into ChatGPT, it reads that and it predicts the very next, I'll say word. They don't quite use words, but we'll say words. Predicts the next word. It then takes all of that and predicts the next word after that. And it takes all of that and does it again. And this is the process. The only trick is ChatGPT, for example, GPT-4, we've trained on 40 billion words. And that number means nothing to anyone. So let me boil that down. As a human, in your lifetime, you'll hear 1 billion words. And from that, you need to understand everything to do with language, how to read, how to write, and you're just hearing that amount. We've trained these AIs on 40 billion words, and that's why they don't speak English. They speak 51 other languages. They speak 11 computer languages. But at the very end of it, it's a really cool magic trick, but it's just predicting the next word or word and a half or half a word. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's complex and it's complicated. And I think a lot of people don't really understand that. And also further, the difference between a ChatGPT that I might just bring up on my browser, and then what about enterprise AI? What is the difference with that?
So let's look at machine learning to start with before we get quite into AI. We've been using machine learning for a really long period of time. Netflix was one of the first stories about machine learning. They can predict by what you watch, how long you watch it, and whether you hit like, what movies to recommend to you. Those are called recommendation engines. Machine learning does this really, really well. It doesn't just do that. I don't know if you've ever got a phone call from like a cable provider or a telephone provider saying, let's offer you a special offer. Well, they've got that because a machine learning algorithm is predicted you're about to churn off the service. So churn prediction is something we've been doing. A lot of that is not dealing with words, it's dealing with numbers. I've got this person and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. Those of you who are around Australia in the early 2000s, up to 2010s, you'd have heard of the ANZ Falcon, which was their credit card fraud protection machine learning environment. So this technology has been around for a while. There was a breakthrough, however, about 6-7 years ago in starting to do this with language, something we call NLP, and that's not neuro-linguistic programming, it's natural language processing. Still get tripped up on that. But natural language processing is using machine learning to effectively understand and predict natural language. And that, I think, so if somebody wants to say, what's the big thing that's happened in AI? Why this big shift? Why is everybody using chatbots? I say it's like the iPhone. Remember when the iPhone first came out? And this is one of my favorite stories. When the iPhone first came out, there was no app store, which surprises almost everybody, right? You couldn't buy apps for your iPhone. So what was the killer feature? Well, the killer feature was the touchscreen. The fact it was so easy to use, it was so responsive, it was so intuitive, that human-computer interface was what changed everybody's life, or they thought it did. With ChatGPT, the fact that it's so accessible, you just type English to it, or whatever your language is, and it types back to you, makes it so ridiculously accessible. That's the big shift. So never underestimate how we interface with devices. So this natural language processing is this amazing thing that's changed the human-computer interface. That's in chatbot land. In enterprise, having all your users do their job quicker, better, faster doesn't always result in a benefit to the bottom line. Certainly might make happier employees, but might not help your organization. So how do I harvest this in a business sense? And there's a few examples of businesses that are doing cool things that go into that if you'd like.
I would love that. And I think, there's a lot of listeners here, some from huge organizations, some from medium and some from small. And I think part of it is really understanding, somebody says, I want to use AI, but they don't really know how or where to put it. And I like to call it the art of possibility.
Sure.
And you start sharing some examples and people go, okay, I think we might be able to. So maybe share some examples from different sized businesses.
Okay. And let's do some things people can do right now. And I'll give you some examples of that. The first one is the IT help desk. Everybody's phoned an IT help desk and either had really great support or really bad support, but definitely they've had to turn it off and back on again. That always happens. So ChatGPT itself, just ChatGPT out of the box, is really good at IT support. So if you've got a problem with your computer, type it into ChatGPT and look at what it tells you to do. It's about as good as a fairly good help desk technician. In fact, we've got a number of what we call managed service providers, so IT companies, using AI to do the first and second level support. So instead of you having to wait for an engineer to read your request, AI is doing that. AI is giving you the first response, looking to how you come back, escalating it to another AI, and then only then, if they can't fix it, it gets to a human. So that's happening in managed service providers with like 3 or 4 staff. Like really small organizations are revolutionizing how they service their clients using that, which is super exciting. Another way I see a lot of organizations using that, one of the things that's really hard to do is see how your organization is trending in social media. Are people happy? Are people sad? Are people upset with your new product? And someone not booking to your campsite? Have they had a bad experience? Now, you can hire organizations to do that work for you, or you can put AI to it. AI is really good at something we call sentiment analysis. Look at the following 50 tweets. Are they happy? Are they supportive? Are they angry? Are they sad? Describe what they are. Which are the ones I need to deal with now? And you're able to respond to that social strategy. So that's what's happening at that end of the world, all the way over to someone like Atlas Copco. They're a big global, they make compressors, they're a big manufacturing company. They grab live information from every compressor out in the field over the internet. And they use that through machine learning and AI to not only predict when something's going to fail and send an engineer out to fix it before it does, but to change their manufacturing process so that never happens again. And that kind of closed loop thing is amazing. But my favorite story ever is, you all have heard the stories about we shouldn't prescribe antibiotics because we're running out of them and we've got antibiotic resistant superbugs. Well, in the last 6 months, AI has discovered a brand new antibiotic, which works on mice. They haven't tried it on humans yet. But that kind of thing's amazing. We're creating a tech that's going to move all aspects of society forward. And those are just 3 little examples.
So if an organization says, okay, that sounds great, Nick, I really am interested. Let's look at the process. What needs to happen first? What does the person who contacts you need to ask for? How does an organization need to be set up?
So as a governance point of view, you need to think about absolutely before anything. As of today, there's various ways to get access to AI, and they range from using something like ChatGPT and using the free version. I always say if you use anything free, you're the product. So I would say most organizations, you mustn't ever use that, and definitely don't use that with personal information, and don't use that with sensitive corporate information. It's not they'll take it and copy it. That's not their intention. But if it goes into train a model, it could come out in an answer at some stage. So watch that. You can then escalate that. And if you're a small team, you can buy ChatGPT for Teams. That has a different agreement. They'll process the data. They won't share it. They won't use it for training. That's cool. But it's all happening in data centers in America. So if you're okay with that, but you need to know that that's happening, you could then go and use the OpenAI technologies on Microsoft Azure, for example. That's cool too. And you can do that in Australia, unless you want to do things like fine tuning. And fine tuning, just as an aside, a little process where you can tune an AI to have like your tone of article or something like that. Well, that's good. You can't do that in Australia either because they don't have the capacity. So you've got to do that over in America. That's okay. So if you then want to go, well, I'm a school or a healthcare provider, or I'm government, and I want to do it in Australia, then you're going to need to stand up your own large language model, which is cool, except it requires quite a lot of processor capability. What we're doing in the machine learning algorithm is we're creating what we call vectors. We're joining together little nodes and vectors together to kind of create this matrix of how I predict answer A from input B. And the computer goes and creates lots of these. And those vectors, when you're training AI or you're using it, you need to do lots of maths on them. We call vector maths, the technology it does it, is something called tensors. You may have heard something called TensorFlow in the AI world. Tensor is the mathematical term for dealing with those. And we found that the technology that does that best is something called a GPU, or graphics processor unit. So you need lots of GPUs. They're about as easy to find as hen's teeth at the moment, and they're really expensive. And you need lots of power and cooling and heating and light. However, if you want to stand up your own one of those, it's not just a destination. You need to continually be retraining it, which needs more hardware. So here are your choices. You can go really cheap for free, and you're leaking your information all over the place. You can use something like Microsoft Azure, and Google and Amazon have similar solutions. Be ready for bill shock and the fact that you can't do that in your country. And if you want to stand up something yourself, you can get far more predictable costs, although they're a little bit larger. But you need to understand your governance. Where am I on that scale of I want to host it all myself in my cupboard to I'm happy to use an online thing? That's step one. Step two is to understand where you're going to use it. Don't do AI for AI's sake. Where are the opportunities in your business, not just for AI, but for process automation? I'm building a solution at the moment for a customer, and it's about notifiable data breaches. So in Australia, we have the notifiable data breach scheme, and part of that is working out whether, from the description of a breach, whether you've actually lost personal information or it's caused harm. And so you could go through and just decide if you wanted to, but we're using AI, because AI is quite good at this, to make the decision and help you with that. So, for example, I've lost a USB key with a bunch of tax file numbers on it. Is that going to cause harm? Is it a loss of personal information? Well, Blind Freddy could say it is, but if you don't know, you can have AI say it is and why, and you get the governance and the support around that decision-making process. Understand those processes in your business. When you've got those, understand your appetite for where you want your AI to be, and then we can have a conversation about how do we automate that process? How do we make AI the way you want it work? I would say, though, you're not alone. The National Institute of Standards and Technology in the US, NIST, have a whole heap of documentation on safe AI and what to think about. There's actually an ISO standard around using AI in your organization. But definitely, if you're one of the notifiable data breach organizations, which is almost everyone, make sure you've gone and understood what your appetite is for it before you give everybody ChatGPT.
You've talked about these large language models like ChatGPT. Now, we know that sometimes we feed information in and we get false data out. I think one of the biggest stories of recent is these lawyers who were using fake cases and suddenly got disbarred. So is it any different when we're using a private LLM within our organization? Are we still kind of up for having fake news?
Still up for hallucinations. We call them hallucinations. That's such a cool name. And I'll kind of explain why. If you've ever used software, the way it sticks in your head is we've got this thing called a database, and I put some data into it, and the software will then retrieve data from the database. We use the term deterministic. Right? I know what's going to happen if I do this. It's going to do it every time. That's one of the things we've learned to like about computers. Humans aren't deterministic at all. I don't know what you're going to say from 1 minute to another, even though we've thought about the script beforehand. You could change it. AI is also non-deterministic. But remember what I said right at the beginning. It's just a predictor of words. It doesn't know what it's saying. It has no idea of the concept or the grammar or the structure. It's just learnt to predict it. And so like anything that's been trained to predict things, it's going to try and answer your question, even if it makes stuff up. And the risk with how GPT hallucinates is that it does it really confidently. I don't know if you've ever been at a pub trivia. You must have been to pub trivia. You're sitting there. There's always one person at the table who answers every question 100% confidently and is almost always wrong. Now, I know, I'm that guy, right?
I was about to say me too.
But that's AI hallucinating. It's trying to answer your question, even if it makes stuff up. And it hasn't just been the case of, the famous one is they go in front of the judge. They got 3 precedents and 2 hallucinations. We've seen hallucinations in government papers. We've seen hallucinations in financial reports. They're everywhere. There are mitigators for that. We're writing a system at the moment with a media company, and we've actually written a process which fact checks the AI using AI, which is kind of cool, but it's going and making sure that things are right. But that's a thing with AI. You get hallucinations, you get false results. We also have to build guardrails because we've trained it on like the totality of human knowledge, if you will. The totality of human knowledge isn't a nice thing. It's biased, it's sexist, it's racist, it's homophobic, it's all of those bad things. And so they've had to build what we call guardrails around the AI to stop it do things like telling you how to build a nuclear bomb with the stuff in your kitchen. So there's all sorts of things we need to stop it doing. We want to stop it being biased, but it is. In the early days of ChatGPT, when it was doing DALL-E, which is where it creates images, if you said, draw a chef, it would invariably draw a man in a professional kitchen. You say, draw a cook, it would draw a woman at home. And that's the bias just in our writings and our language as humans. So they're having to do a lot of work post building the model to retrain it and readjust it to not do those things. And that's a risk. However, if you've got your own model, your own storage, your own data centers, you're doing your own tuning, you can do your own guardrails and actually make sure it doesn't go out too far from what you need.
Do you want your team to achieve peak performance? Well, then it's time for a change. Welcome to Leading Edge. We're not about traditional training. We're about transformation. Our outcomes-based leadership development programs focus on real results through behavior change and mindset shifts. We customize programs tailored to your team's needs, packed with cutting-edge content based on neuroscience and positive psychology. We run engaging workshops, personalized coaching sessions, and practical exercises to ensure an enriching experience for your team. How does it work? We dive deep. We start with surveys to identify strengths and gaps, which helps us to design a bespoke program designed for your team's success. With our approach, progress is inevitable. Our expertly facilitated workshops and coaching sessions ensure growth, and the results speak for themselves. Are you ready to take the leap? It's simple. First, choose your program. We have 5 to choose from, or you can customize a program to suit your team's needs. Second, pick your duration. We deliver 3, 6, or 12-month programs. This way, we can reinforce the learnings over time to drive real change. And finally, plan with us. Each team is different, so we make sure that what we're delivering is exactly what you need. Let's unlock your team's potential together. Contact us today, and let's start this journey to transform your team to achieve greatness. It leads to a really interesting question about how we structure our organization to enable this. So, there's questions around culture. How do we become an innovative culture that embraces AI? How do we roll that out through the organization? How do we structure ourselves? What are the behaviors and the skill sets? How do you go into an organization and start addressing some of those challenges?
The first thing to address before you touch anything else is fear. There is a palpable fear in the workforce that their jobs will be taken away by AI. I always think it's someone with AI, not AI itself, but people are very scared. People who are scared when you're doing a change project are very resistant to change and will actually try and derail the project if they can. We call them project terrorists. They're pretty hard to find. I can spot them now. I've seen a few, but they're just people who are scared that their world's going to change. They're going to lose their job. People are very fearful of change. With all of your team, when you're working through an AI project, something that's going to create automation, make things faster and quicker and better, the people who are doing that job before, you need to solve the problem of what you do with them before you even start implementing that project. Now, it may be that what you're going to do with them is exit them from the business, but you have to plan that at the beginning, right? That needs to be something you do almost together with them. Mass redundancies don't work well in the media. Especially not AI-based mass redundancies. That's not going to fly. So how do you manage that? Are you going to move them to other areas of the business? Are they going to be your AI champions? Are they going to go around other areas of the business, changing it? Decide that before you start the project, or your project is doomed to failure. And we want to avoid that if we can. Once you've done that, work out what you're going to automate and what that means from a financial and business sense. There's no point automating for automation's sake. Lots of people will do that. There's lots of pressure from boards to do something with AI. And there's lots of I'm doing something with AI projects out there. I think I read 8 in the media this morning, and they're just ticking that box. They're not really making a difference. You want to understand what's the business case you're aiming for and celebrate when you hit it in real metrics. I was quite amazed in the AI presentations I've seen from major vendors this year. It's almost impossible to find a case study that talks about how we've actually changed real numbers using these projects. Lots of people will tell you about the stuff they're playing with. Very few will tell you about the real changes. And I can talk about some of those from our customer base. We've got an organization we're working with at the moment that say they've got 1,000-ish chauffeurs around the place. And scheduling those was a team of 40 people. Really smart. People who schedule chauffeurs just have a gut feel for it. AI is a bit better at that. And so we've taken something that took 5 or 6 hours to something that takes 10 minutes. It's more accurate. It's done by some AI, some coding and some AI. We're not just using large language models and say, go solve it. That project's taken, I don't know, 5 months. We're about to go live with it, and we're now taking those 40 people and giving better customer service than we were before. So that's a really cool change. That's been hard to make happen and get across it. But there's something I can say, here's the real saving. Here's the real tangible benefit. I'm not doing AI for AI's sake. I'm solving a real business problem. There are some out there, but not a lot. You need to focus on that so that people can celebrate when this has happened. The other thing is a great quote I heard the other day. We've got to stop AI doing video, music, and art, because actually we want it to do the washing up so we can focus on doing the music and the art and the creative stuff. Just an aside there. So focus on doing something that people hate, get rid of that, find a place for them to be that's not horrible and scary. And I think you can be more successful that way.
So it sounds like there needs to be some sort of a prioritization. So we say that, we come into an organization, there's places where we know we have data, where we know we have manual processing. So we kind of maybe make a collection, 10 projects. Where do we prioritize?
I'd prioritize on the easiest to solve first. You want to get some early wins. There are some things that AI is just bad at. And some of them you won't know till you try it. Certainly we found a couple of areas where it just doesn't quite get there. It hallucinates too much, or it's not quite what we need, or tone's wrong, or whatever it is. So don't do that project. Go and find another one that you can do and make it happen. So it's prioritize based on ease for your first one, and then prioritize based on bang for your buck. Where can you actually make the most visible impact and kind of expose that this isn't scary, right? It's like having electric tools. It's like having a water wheel. It's like having a spinning mill instead of cottage industry. And while that did change the workforce and how they worked, and I certainly wouldn't recommend we go back to the beginnings of the Industrial Revolution, there is a revolution happening and there is a change. And I'd say there's always been a change. We released things like MYOB and Xero, which changed bookkeeping and accounting forever. We've released tools like Leap, which has changed the legal industry forever. I was really worried, and I've spoken to some people early on about some of our professions and how AI is going to change them. So law and accounting, I'll pick those two because I know them. We take juniors into those organizations and we train them by doing the grunt work that AI is now going to do. And there's a bunch of people, I've had some conversations where we're really scared. How are we going to bring the next level of professionals into the business? And I worked it out the other day. We're going to get them to double check the AI. And when you do that, some things will change. And then the very last thing I think you should always do, and I think this is going to be more and more important as we move forward, is where you use an AI, be transparent about it. Tell your customers, we're using AI to do this. Tell your business, we're using AI to do this, because trust is going to become really important. And as we move forward and you get fake videos or fake news or members of the royal family making up stuff, or whatever it is, trust is going to be really quickly eroded. If you stand up and go, oh yeah, for that, we use AI to do that. Oh, they're being honest about it. It builds trust, and trust between people is really, really important.
You talked about, bringing juniors into the organization to double check the AI. Well, there's a lot of businesses out there that don't have juniors coming in all the time to check it. So, it strikes me that, some of the key skills that are going to be needed are things like critical thinking, to be able to assess what's come out and is this really the right answer. So what are the key skills that might be a little bit different for future organizations than what we have now?
Understanding how to use AI. If you get a new colleague tomorrow, it's going to take you a few weeks to work out how you best work together. Large language models are no different. You have to learn how to speak to them. I've been using large language models since, I think we're 5 years now that I've been playing around this bit of at least that natural language processing bit of the world. And I've had to learn how to talk to them to get the results you want. And there's some tricks we can use. And there's just some little ones. If you're talking to something like ChatGPT and you want it to slow down and do this, say step by step, if it's not giving you what you want, offer it a gratuity. So I'll pay you $200 if you get this right. That all helps. Strangely, nobody really knows why, but there's a whole science to that kind of prompt engineering stuff. But those skills of being able to use the AI to get what you want, the being able to look at AI generated content, pick out where it got things wrong, to be able to tweak it, to stop. I was working with one of my development team just this week, and I sat down with them, and they've got a piece of code written by an AI, and it's not working. And I said, well, tell the AI it's not working and it's not what you want. And, oh, can I do that? I went, yeah, of course you can. This week, I told ChatGPT to stop being sassy with me. Those kind of things. This is a tool. It's not an intelligence. It doesn't have emotions. It really doesn't. Right? It's just a word predictor. And so you need to instruct it in a way which gets you the result you want. That's a learned skill. We all have to learn how to do that. That actually puts me on a tangent as to why we have to expose this in schools. If we don't, we're going to create a whole generation of young people who are actually not versed in the biggest tool ever to hit the world. Now, when I grew up in the 70s and 80s in the UK, the UK government put BBC B microcomputers in every school, and they taught everybody to have a certain level of computer literacy. It's amazing. We need to have those type of engagements from government to give everybody a level of AI literacy, because it's going to be one of those tools that everyone uses. This is not like blockchain and Web3. This is actually making a real difference and making some real things happen. And we need to train the kids.
Which is really ironic because at the moment, the schools are actually scanning to see if you used those tools. So, yeah.
I did some work with a couple of schools. I wrote a book. Should I lie? Let me be transparent. ChatGPT and me wrote a book on using ChatGPT in education. And some of the things in there we talk about are, if you're giving kids an essay subject, get ChatGPT to write the answer and then say that's 0 points, improve on it. Right? The taking the tool out of the equation is really useful. But as a teacher, using it the thing that really excites me about in an education is if I've got a class of 30 kids, I have 4 or 5 different learning styles. I have a whole range and a bell curve of capability. And to really teach them properly, I need different learning styles and activities for every child. Now, a single teacher can't do that. But with the help of an AI, you can build lesson plans around a single lesson for every individual child and help everybody move up and forward. And that, I think, is crazy exciting. But you're right. Education saying, oh, no, don't use that. That's frightening.
And so do you have similar examples within other types of businesses where you can actually customize for not just the customers, but for employees?
Yeah, so everything you could possibly conceive of where people do things. I'll give you some examples. I have this pathological fear of walking into an airport lounge and seeing people copying things from one application into Excel to another application. AI can really help with that, by the way. But the key areas it can help is in every business, you have data that's locked inside systems. It's locked inside databases. We've had all these, let's build a data lake projects, and now it's locked inside your data lake. But your ordinary users can't get access to that data. And that's where large language models with some of the tools that are out there become amazing. You can teach a large language model your data schema and then ask real natural language questions. And I'll use a real example. I've got a customer, they're a carpet manufacturer. And the CEO inherited the business. So she's not a business person at all. And she wanted to know, she had reasonable questions. Who's my top salesperson? What's the top brand of carpet that's working? What possibly will sell next month based on historical trends? And so people had given her Power BI dashboards and big Excel reports and PDF, and she was confused. And so we, just as a prototype actually, used something called LangChain and built a chatbot that understood her data. So she could ask any question of her business and it would come back and give her the answer. Show me the top 10 salespeople this month. But there you are. Show me which color's selling best across all our carpet types. There you go. To get that out of slicing and dicing reports or doing pivot tables was so far beyond her. But now we can take that data in any organization and give that to people whose skills may be in other areas, rather than going the other way around and teaching them how to use analytics tools.
Now, we hear a lot about organizations who are Microsoft-based, which is a large number of organizations, and they're starting to use Copilot. What are you seeing in Copilot? Is it working? Is it making people more productive? Is it making organizations more productive?
So I've got to be nice about Copilot because we're a Microsoft partner. I sell my software on the Azure Marketplace. I'm an ex-Microsoftie, so there's blue blood in my veins, so I will be nice. Copilot's really fascinating. It's been brought into market based on one of the GPTs. Not quite sure. Sometimes it's 3.5, sometimes it's 4. I'm not quite sure. The neat thing about Copilot is it should have access to all of your internal data. You can actually do that, by the way, you can do that with ChatGPT as well, but I won't go there. I've seen kind of mixtures. So I'll talk about some of the things I've seen. I've seen people say, I still prefer ChatGPT. I think some of that is getting used to talking to a tuned AI. Copilot's been tuned differently. It's maybe a GPT-3, GPT-4 model, but it's been tuned differently by Microsoft. So it's going to talk to you differently. So you need to make that work. I've also sat with organizations looking at doing it, and they went, well, really, if we're going to use Copilot, we have to prefix that with a project to classify all of our data. That's a big project. Don't underestimate the size of that, the complexity of that, and what you have to do to use it effectively. But it doesn't matter if that's Copilot or anything else. But I think the elephant in the room around ChatGPT and Copilot are the fact that they live right smack bang in personal productivity. And while personal productivity is cool, I have written 6 books in half a day each with ChatGPT, and boy, that's personal productivity. That hasn't moved my business forward. Right? That hasn't changed my bottom line. It's made me more effective. It's made me a 10x developer, writer, blogger, etc. But that hasn't actually changed the business processes. That hasn't made the core things that make my business run move faster. And my fear is, I actually wrote a blog post on this recently, my fear is the economics of Copilot, ChatGPT, our chatbot friends, are really going to disenfranchise people soon when they see that it's not actually driving the corporate benefit we thought it would. I think at senior levels in organizations, we need to think about, okay, how do I apply AI at a business process level, not just empowering my staff? And this is something I was told years ago when I was selling systems management software to people. And I said, oh, you can save, 10 minutes per person per day. And they went, they'll have a longer break. Right? I'm not saving anything. I'm still paying them the same amount. I'm still getting the same amount of output. The risk is you pay everyone the same amount. You get the same amount of output, so everybody's fine, but they're only spending an hour a day doing it. And you've got 7 hours you could actually get some value from that you're not. The other risk is you don't actually have that much work for them. So everyone's kind of underemployed in your business and they seek other opportunities and you lose talent. There's risk abounds with making people ridiculously more effective without understanding that and using that to your benefit. So buyer beware. It's cool, it's effective, it makes people happy, but it can be a risk as well.
And it might not be that silver bullet that we're hearing about.
So never silver bullets. We're the IT industry. We do a silver bullet a month, and they're never really silver bullets. So.
Now, you've done a lot of implementations of AI, of automation, RPA. Tell us a little bit about what are some of the projects that maybe didn't quite go as planned? Where are the issue areas?
So there's a few of those. So I'll start process automation. Process automation is really cool if you have people in the project who not just understand the process, but understand process automation and how to make it better. Where you have a broken process and you try and automate a broken process, you get a faster broken process. You don't get things fixed. Making it faster and more streamlined does not fix things which are fundamentally wrong. That's really important. Understanding where things are in steps that you can describe back to management is really important as well. One of the risks with business process automation, I'll use a couple of examples. I'm working with a school and they built a bunch of Microsoft Power Automate, these flows which automate bits of their business. There's one person who's built them who's an employee and they're all registered under their username. And if they were to leave, they'd all stop working. They're not documented. They're not managed as far as production is concerned. They're becoming mission critical. Right? And we're getting into the position we were with things like Lotus Notes and Access, dare I say, without upsetting people who do that, where citizen developers were building things that became mission critical and you had no path to turn that into proper grown-up tools. So we spend a lot of time, at least in the stuff we do in World of Workflows, on saying, okay, you built some really cool stuff here. Let's elevate this into production-ready stuff. Let's make this run not as a user, but in your system. Let's document it properly. Let's understand our change control processes. Let's put it into production rather than into production. And that's a big risk with automation. What I've seen in business is lots of really cool things become a risk rather than a reward from what they're doing. So for us in implementation land, it's about understanding real production rather than the citizen developer, great things, but potential risks.
So it sounds like we really need to have that governance in place. Who's going to look after it? Is it IT? Is it business? Is there a new piece of the organization that's going to now own automation and AI? How do we manage that? Do you have any recommendations?
I think it's a new bit of the organization. I like business process and AI to be managed outside of IT and out of the business. The business actually really understand their processes and what they want to solve, and we can upskill them with this tech. IT are very technical and understand technical capabilities, and they're really good at that. But sometimes it's hard to get them to the business level as well at the same time. And that's not everyone. It's a massive generalization, and I'll probably get killed for saying it, but that's what I'm seeing. And where I've seen it work the best is where we've been able to take somebody who's passionately interested in the business part-time and said, right, now you're in charge of automation and AI. And I'm thinking of one particularly in education. As an educator, we started off, I think I got 2 periods a week of his time, but he was able to communicate back with the staff and back with IT. And we had this awesome, if you watch Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Babelfish, translating between the two people who couldn't translate, and the things that were built in a year you could never have done with one side or the other. That's the magic trick. And I think you need the business folks doing that and driving that. And that's how you get the excitement out of it.
Any other challenges, big ones?
Project terrorists, they're always a challenge. I've spoken about those a little bit. They're kind of fun.
How do you address them?
You find them and befriend them really early in the process. And I normally end up making them in charge of the project. That's a real fix there, if you can. Make them part of the solution, not part of the problem, because they will break it. Executive buy-in is really important. And the very last thing is the education, the understanding. People go and play with ChatGPT, and it's funny. I still do large audiences of professionals, and I go, how many people have used ChatGPT? And it's only half the audience. And how many people use it regularly? And there's a smattering of hands. And people have seen this tech, have thought it's amazing, and have gone no further with it and really don't understand it. And so teaching people to understand the limitations is really important. This isn't a silver bullet. This isn't magic. This is just another piece of technology that can do some things. And getting that through people's heads, I think, is really important. So terrorists, we want to watch out for. We want to watch out for education, and we want to watch out for bring everybody on a journey to solve real problems that can be solved with AI, not just ones we think can be.
What's best practice? What are some amazing things you've done, particularly around the implementation and embedding of that change within a company?
Yeah, that's, I'll use a couple of examples. So I can't quote customer names, but I'll use one. I was working with a big insurance broker. Their issue was this. To renew an insurance policy, at least a big thing around strata or big machinery or stuff like this, is a really complex process. There's so much to it. It's not funny. And it's not just a process where you do this, then this, and this. You have to go to third parties, and you have to wait for stuff. And sometimes they won't give you the result you need. And there's all this stuff going on, and they're required to report, and they've got hard deadlines. If you don't reinsure someone by the date they need to be reinsured and something happens the next day, everyone's in trouble. Like big, people might die trouble. So there's this huge set of processes. And we learned something while automating it, which was really funky. When we first automated it, we did no automation. So all we did was we created a set of task queues. So everything that had to be done by a human popped into a queue. And it was described exactly what you need to do with all the data, and they were told to go and do it. And they grab some and they do their queue, and we got that working. And then as we started automating things, tasks would just not appear anymore. And because they got used to not understanding where they were in the process and just doing a list of tasks, we were able to change the process without retraining a soul, because they just pick up what they needed to do. That was seeing that happen, because there was a hypothesis first, but seeing that happen was amazing. And still I got pushback going, where am I in the process? I said, you don't care. The system knows where each of them, and you're doing 2,000 renewals. You won't be able to do that. But the system knows where you are, and the system tells you the next thing to do. Oh, but it hasn't told me to do that for a while. No, we automated that a few weeks ago. Oh, and the light bulbs go on. That was the amazing way of sneaking in automation without retraining your staff. That was really cool. So did the first hurdle, then off you go.
That is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I love that one. Now, to finish up, Nick, sounds like you have AI'd your life. I reckon there are listeners out there who would love to be able to get some of what you have. So can you give us your top 3, whether it's for your business productivity or your personal productivity? What do you recommend?
All right, I'll do a few. because I might do more than 3 if that's okay, because I got a couple. Right, my first one, well, I've got 4 kids, right? And we have this notepad on the fridge. And when we run out of something, they're meant to write what we want to go and get from the supermarket on the fridge. And they do. And there's little heart shapes and they scroll it on there and it's illegible. ChatGPT, if I take a photo, will tell me what's on there and create a shopping list. Right? That's super cool. That's AI in my life like you wouldn't believe, right? Awesome stuff. So do try
I had
that.
no idea it could even do that. That's brilliant.
So if you ever see one of my presentations, a lot of my presentations have a Lego or Playmobil slide backgrounds. ChatGPT is really good. If you say a Lego kit of whatever you want, will build a Lego kit of whatever you want, be it a school council or a political meeting or whatever. It's brilliant. It's really cool. It's worthwhile doing. Great slide backgrounds. The other one is, I'll tell you a story. So 2 years ago, ChatGPT had first come out. Moheb Moses, who was running something called CompTIA. CompTIA is the world's largest computer trade industry association. And I was founder chair of the Australian chapter for that. Asked me to come and talk to the group on AI. And it was a couple of weeks away. And I was like, yeah, sure. And then I'm sitting there in the shower one Thursday and I'm going to give a presentation. I need more than just going to give a presentation. I know. I thought I'll write a book. So I sat down in front of ChatGPT. I got out of the shower, right? Got dry, put some clothes on. Sat down in front of ChatGPT and my computer said, hey, ChatGPT, I'm giving a presentation about ChatGPT next Wednesday. I'd like to write a book. Can you help? And ChatGPT said, what a great idea. Here's a table of contents. And I went, oh, yeah, but I'd like this and that. And so we altered that for a bit. And then I said, that's cool. Can you write chapter 1? And he goes, I wrote chapter 1. So anyway, he wrote the book. So by lunchtime, done, manuscript ready. ChatGPT for executives is now a thing. And I uploaded it to Amazon, and Amazon have this thing called Kindle Direct Publishing. And so I uploaded it. By 5 o'clock that day, Amazon come back and say, yeah, your book's approved. How many copies would you like? And I'm seeing 50 people, 50 paperback copies, please. On Sunday, right? Thursday morning, I had the idea. Sunday lunchtime, they delivered a box of books to my door. How cool is that?
That is unreal.
Yeah.
I love it.
so just and what freaks me out is not the AI, because I get that. It's the logistics of being able to take a Word document and turn it into a paperback and have it with me in 3 days. Nobody can do that. It's amazing stuff. Anyway, so I turned up to that, handed out my book to a few people. La, la, la. Someone asked me to sign it. I was all embarrassed. And 2 weeks later, we're Australian Business Book bestseller. Because it's not hard to be a bestseller of Australian business. Like the categories get smaller and smaller, so you only have to do about 100. But we sold loads, and I've done a few since then. So that's something for me, I find, when I've got an idea or a set of things, getting ChatGPT to write it down for me is cool. The other couple of things I use it for is when I'm about to have a meeting with people and I want to really understand who they are. I could go read their LinkedIn profiles. I don't. I go to LinkedIn, I export the profile as a PDF, I paste that into ChatGPT and I say, write me a dossier on this person. And it writes, here's who they are, here's where they studied, here's what they do, here's a summary about them. It's not perfect, it's LinkedIn, but it gives me a really quick summary of what's going on. So I can consume vast amounts of documentation really quickly because it's giving me summaries so I know what I'm doing. So summarization, creating images, reading the list on my fridge, and writing books. Those are my kind of 4 things.
Amazing. Well, I hope that our listeners take that in and get a little bit more productivity in their life so they can get more done in a day.
Absolutely.
Hey, Nick, it has been an absolute pleasure. Now, where can our listeners find you?
So worldofworkflows.com is where I am. You can find me on LinkedIn. So linkedin.com/in/Nick Beaugeard. So if you can spell my surname, you've won, and you actually can find my profile. So that's one of the things you can do. Or if you want to share my email address, they can email me and have a conversation. I like to talk to people, so feel free to reach out in any way you feel like.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Thanks for being here.
Cool. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe. Taking just 2 minutes to leave a review on Apple Podcasts would mean the world. Your reviews play a vital role in expanding the reach of this podcast and making a bigger impact.